Hello.
What you doing?
Hey, just waiting for you to call.
Did you do your vocal warm-ups? Did you make sure that everything was in shape and in tune?
Yes, of course, of course.
Hey, congratulations on this project, because you and I talked about this well before you even put it into play, because you did a fundraiser and man, people responded immediately to this.
Yes, we did it with the Indiegogo campaign, and a lot of people were just really excited to be a part of this process, because not only would they be able to donate to the project, they would get a CD in return, which was really great too, because now we have a physical format for this album as opposed to my last one when it was just digital only.
Listeners have to understand the name of the album. This is my interpretation of why I understand the name of the album, which is Glowing in Timeless Places. It's because you take us musically into areas that if you're not in that park, then you don't know a lot of this music.
Correct. And a lot of people, I think a lot of people connect with the music of the Disney theme parks. You know, sometimes when you hear it, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm back on Main Street, or I'm back right at Spaceship Earth. And it just kind of transports you. That's what it did for me as a kid when I would listen to these songs on cassette tape.
So what was the choice behind We've Just Begun a Dream? I mean, you talk about this is a big song that people are going to go, oh my God, nobody sings that song. And then here you are.
Well, that one was the opening day song for EPCOT, and it's never been performed since. And they, for some reason, through a technicality, they used a little bit of it at Disneyland Paris on a release. So I was able to cover it, because the song has to be officially released before you can cover it. So that was my dilemma with that one in particular, and we found a loophole and it was released. So that one is just like the introduction to the album, and a lot of people, when I showed them, had them listen ahead of time to the album, they're like, why is the instrumental so long on the album? I'm like, well, we're transporting you to EPCOT. We're transporting you to a new world to enjoy and listen to.
You know what I call that? I call that breathing. And I talk with more musicians about that. It's like, thank you for giving me the chance to get into the mindset of your song before you started singing. I need that song intro. And the other part of that is, thanks for having a long intro, because I'm a radio disc jockey. I need a long intro. I got a lot to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's more fun. I think people rush things too much, especially musically nowadays. Some of the most enjoyable songs are 6 minutes long. You know what I mean? I think that's a good thing. You know what I mean? It's a journey.
So the first trip to Disney in 1998, it changed your life. I mean, it has become your movie soundtrack.
Truly. I think apparently my parents said when we first went, my dad only had like a photo camera, and I wouldn't stop talking about it for 6 months. And we went back 6 months later, and he brought a video camera, and that kind of changed the whole game, because you came back home. This is before iPhones and anything, but you could watch what you did. And my dad would make these VHS tape copies of our experiences, and we would just watch them when we were so sad that we weren't at Disney, and then it would inspire us to go back. So it was just one of those things that you just continue to watch and listen to, and you hear the music in the theme parks and the parades and the fireworks, and it just stays with you for so long. So yeah, it was that was the inspiration behind going and revisiting these songs, but doing covers of them.
And Tammy, I mean, this music is fantastic. I know when I take my kids to Disney, we will turn on sound, all the music that we love, all the park sounds and music, and what you're singing and what you're providing is right in line to what we do to get ready for those parks. We can definitely tell that you're a huge fan of the parks. But I'm curious, when you come across people, you're sharing your music, is there anybody that you're meeting that doesn't know Disney, and you're able to give them that first glimpse of magic through your music? Are you having those conversations with people?
Yes, a lot of people I get to talk to, they kind of ask me what I do, for a living. And I work in healthcare full time, but I tell them about my podcasting, because a lot of the people you hear in the album are people I've gotten the blessing to perform with on these albums. So for a particular specific person, Patrick Richwood, he plays the Dream Finder, and I play Figment in One Little Spark. And Patrick, I grew up watching in a Disney Channel series called Adventures in Wonderland, but most people know him because he was Gary Marshall, director Gary Marshall's little special actor he would put in all his movies. So he's in Pretty Woman as the gentleman who rides the elevator up with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. He's the Que Sera guy in Beaches. So a lot of people know his face and know his performances. So when I told a couple people that, they're like, oh my gosh, you got to sing with him? I'm like, yeah, I do. And he's a good friend of mine. So it's just really cool how, you can kind of inspire other people to listen to your music when it's not always related to Disney, but they like it. And it's interesting because some people are like, wow, I never really heard the song I See You from Avatar. Yeah. Like I heard it when I saw the movie, but I never really heard it until you sang it. And I guess it's just the different way you present the music too.
Nora brought up a very interesting question. How do you handle people that don't know the Disney music? And he's 2 feet away from me, and he doesn't realize I'm that person. I don't know Disney music, and so therefore, vicariously, Tammy, I have lived through this the multiple times that we have talked through you, and I listen to this music, and so yeah. Unless I've seen it in a movie, I know nothing. I've never been to the park.
You've never been to the park before?
Never been to the park.
Arrow.
Oh, come on. We got to take you now.
If you want to relive childhood, Arrow, I think Tammy and I can both attest to you. You need to start fresh, go in, hug a cast member. Listen to Tammy's albums. And no, there's nothing better. I'm sitting here. I'm super excited, Tammy. Like, I'm ready to go to the park. I'm ready to listen. But I have a question for you. I have a question. So you're a super fan, Happily Ever After or Enchanted? Enchantment.
Probably Happily Ever After. But
I'm right there with you.
Fun fact about me, I don't like fireworks. So I am usually in a store that's supposed to be closed, and the cast members are nice enough to let me sit in there and wait.
That's amazing.
Because I don't like loud noises, but I watch them online. So
yeah.
I do like
That's funny you say that. Sometimes after we get back from a trip to Disney, we'll turn that on and we'll just end our day with the park closing fireworks. Oh, so cool. So cool.
It's so nice, isn't it? And I love the Hunchback segment in it. I was
Absolutely.
I got teary-eyed when I watched it at home. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing Hunchback, because I think those films after the Disney Renaissance, like after, Lion King, I don't think they're well known. Like they're not noticeable enough for Disney to advertise. And so I was like, oh my gosh, they included Hunchback.
It's so funny that even their worst works, I mean, they're underrated, but they're still phenomenal. I know listening to your podcasts, some of my favorite things, like Treasure Planet or I'm trying to think of the one that you just did, Meet the Robinsons. You got to talk to some phenomenal creative people, some people that worked on these great films and get to know them and speak to them. I'm sure that comes across in your music, your excitement, and how much fun it is doing that.
Oh, yeah. I love to highlight. I think one of my things with my podcast is I love to talk to people that have never gotten a chance to tell their story. So, for instance, like I'll talk to people and sometimes they're like, well, I never understood. Why did you want to interview me? And I said, well, you animated in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and you worked on Pete's Dragon, or you got to work alongside Walt Disney in one of his last films, The Jungle Book. And some of these people never get to tell their story. So I love to tell the story, help tell somebody's story, and also tell the story of a song, because there's so many different interpretations that you can make of a song, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the difficult challenge of this album, is you're doing covers and the songs are already perfection. How can you build on it and make it different and enjoyable and still something that somebody will want to check out? And that was the biggest challenge. It's hard.
Well, it's come across so well. I mean, the music is fantastic. I've shared it with my family, and I think we should share it with Arrow. What would you recommend? Where would you recommend Arrow to start?
Say that again?
Where would you recommend Arrow to start on his Disney adventure? What music should we recommend to him?
Well, you know what? I would start with Disney Plus documentaries. I think, Arrow, you would be interested in one's called Waking Sleeping Beauty, which is about how Disney was kind of in a lull with their animated films and they weren't going to do them anymore. And then this renaissance happened after Oliver and Company and The Little Mermaid. And I just love those type of documentaries because it shows another side of the company. So you hear from Roy E. Disney, you hear from Michael Eisner, you hear from Jeffrey Katzenberg, and it's just such an interesting documentary. And it doesn't shy away from the disappointments. You know what I mean? Like, I never bring up the negative of anything, but that comes with the positive. So you can't just ignore it. So I think that's something you might enjoy if you want to start with films.
Well, I got to be honest with you that I do have Disney Plus, and I did watch the big, was it 9-part documentary about the building of it and how they struggled down in Florida and what was it? Something Tronics? Was it the Disney Tronics? Something when he built his team, they were all part of. He had to get get people. It wasn't necessarily just animators. He needed to build it with people who understood their part of a business. And even though they had nothing to do with movies, he still brought them in. And at the small office and everything that was available for him and everything, because, I mean, he didn't start off in this gigantic building. He had to build all that stuff.
It was from the ground up, and you're right. It was Imagineers, and it was these individuals that had never worked on anything like that. And I think you're talking about the Imagineering story, which is brilliant, and it has a big book that accompanies it as well too. It's huge, and I think a lot of these individuals. I think that's another reason that things are so different nowadays. It's more of the business of it, instead of the creative outlook and trial and error, because that was all about Imagineering back in the day. And there's so many different documentaries online about EPCOT from 1982 that I would definitely suggest. They're all on YouTube. If you just type in EPCOT documentary about how they made EPCOT, like I talked to some of these individuals, like for the American Adventure attraction, some of these individuals were sleeping inside the theater up until, the park opened, because it's trial and error, and you're trying to build the best park possible, and it's all up to last minute. But gosh, did they deliver? You know what I mean? Some of these things are still there 40 years later.
Well, I was blessed with the opportunity to talk with Disney's granddaughter, Leslie Iwerks, and to sit down with her and have a conversation, because there's and I know we're supposed to be talking about your music, but we were talking about Disney too. But there's a whole entire layout of the history of Disney in hardcover books and pictures and things like that. And so now, in talking with you, it's going to change me in looking at those books, because now to hear your passion, the two of you, right here, explaining it. Now, when I go see those pictures, I'm going to have a better understanding.
I was all about the physical media back then, to be quite honest. My dad had so many animation books, and I would just pull them off the shelf and look at them. I couldn't draw, but it inspired me. I was like, how can they do this? How can they create a character? And that was just another reason I wanted to make a CD. I created a special booklet, and inside of it, there are photos from my family's Disney trips that correspond to the songs I'm covering. And there's also, my lyrics for my new song Cinematic, and all the people who donated to the album. They're all listed inside the booklet. And I think I miss that. I miss having a book or a CD in my hand and having
to touch and open.
Yeah.
Well, that new song, I'm so curious, because music from Disney is second to none, and you're right there with these fantastic songs. I mean, just to sing what's there, but to come up with your own song and tap into that Disney magic. I mean, how does that feel to have that song come out?
Well, I was really worried, like even leading up maybe 20 minutes before going into the recording studio, I was altering lyrics. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And Cinematic specifically is kind of based off of a Disneyland Paris film that I never got to see in person, but it just inspired me. It was called Cinemagique, which means movie magic in French. And it's just about this guy who gets sucked into the movies after he answers a phone call during a movie. And he has to escape all of these movies we know and love. And I just kind of was like, let me take the premise and turn it on its head. And I wrote this song with a friend of mine, Charlie DeMetz, and then our friend James Clark, created the instrumental. And I got to perform it 2 weeks ago for the first time live.
Yeah, you did.
And people were just, I guess they didn't know what to think of it in a good way. And I was like, oh, good. Okay. We're getting people interested in a different story. So that's what I love to do when I write.
So now, is Disney knocking on your door in the way? Because I know if I were a high school and I was putting up Disney and performing it in live in front of people, do you have to have permission? Because, SoundCloud, if you don't have permission, they're taking you down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was working with Disney from day one.
Okay.
You have to get all the song titles approved. You have to get what's inside the booklet approved as well, too. It's all copyrighted. So that I was working with them from day one, and they were great, very helpful, especially when some of these songs are not particularly well known, and they had to go digging in the archive to see if they were ever released, which was really helpful. That I had really appreciated they did.
Did they give you free tickets for covering the music?
Oh, I wish. I will get to perform some of the songs, hopefully, for a Disney fan event in October for Retro Magic, which will be great, and get to sell some CDs, hopefully there too. But I nothing yet. But hopefully, maybe, you never know who's listening.
The two of you, I have a personal question for you. In the way that Disney is all over the news right now, and North Carolina is trying to get to sway Disney to come here, and so is Texas. If Disney were to decide to move, would it change your love for the park?
Oh, absolutely not for me. They're everywhere already, and every new little Disney opening. I'll tell you what, Arrow, I was sad when they closed the Disney stores. I don't know, Tammy, if you felt the same way.
At the mall.
That was like my little touch before I went somewhere. And it's a small thing,
right.
But any new park, any new anything that I can get to and go to is just that much better. How about you, Tammy?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. They said that they were going to do it here in Philadelphia, where I'm based, and they never did. So I don't think it's going to happen. But hey, I don't mind. I'll go anywhere. I really want to visit overseas, the Disneyland parks in Hong Kong and Disneyland Paris. That's a dream of mine, to get over there. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter where you go. It's the cast members that really matter in the end, of who help make those parks magical. So if they're there, I'm there.
That park almost did not happen over there. I mean, I watched that documentary, and what they had to do, it wasn't big enough. They didn't know how people over there would really respect it, and they did. They came by the masses.
Mm-hmm. They had no idea. And, you never know if you don't try. And some things might not be successful at first, but sometimes it takes a couple of years. As we were mentioning Treasure Planet and Meet the Robinsons, I think Disney's realizing that there is an affinity. There's this whole other age group of kids who grew up with it, like myself, who really loved those films. And maybe they tanked at the box office, but now they're making pins, and now they're celebrating anniversaries and making Loungefly bags, So it's not like we're totally ignored. You know what I mean? There is a love and an affinity for these things, regardless of your age.
Absolutely, and there's a beautiful nostalgia, even for the stuff that came out of the 50s and 60s. I grew up with a lot of those things, watching them as a kid, and I really love in your music that you're touching those older pieces of music. The One Little Spark song, and one of my favorites is the Canada song from the EPCOT land. My kids know if I put that on, we're getting close to Disney. I just it just sings to me, and I really do love the way that you sing that. It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. That Canada song was so much fun to record. And I love the way Josh Freelick, who created the instrumental for that, he gave it like a twang, a more of a southern, sound to it, which I really loved. I think it's more homely and in a good way. Like it makes you think of home. And I've never been to Canada. I would love to, and I'd love to sing it there.
It's amazing. Yeah, it is a great place.
So now that the CD is out, what's next for Tammy Tuckey? What happens to the journey now, and how can people reach out to you?
Still promoting the CD for the next couple of months. And if you want to, buy a physical copy of the CD or, download the digital copy, you can head to tammytuckey.com/order. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Tammy Tuckey, or Facebook at Singer Tammy Tuckey. I do podcasting. So starting back in June, I'll be doing live interviews at 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday nights with some of your favorite Disney individuals who will be taking your questions live. And that's at youtube.com/Tammy Tuckey. And who knows, maybe if something big comes of this album, another album might happen. I always have ideas.
Yeah, you don't know how to turn it off. You just keep going no matter what.
Yeah, I enjoy it. If others are enjoying it, that makes me even more happier. Nothing makes me happier than being in the recording studio too. So. And
Tammy, I think if you get into the duets realm, Arrow, if we get him on board, there's a chance.
I'd love
He's
that.
got a good voice.
Yes, Arrow, we got to do something.
Please come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
You guys are the best. Thank you so much for having me. I miss talking to you guys, so thank you.
Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
You too. See ya.